SnowTrax is sponsored by Ski-Doo Snowmobiles, Yamaha conquers snow, and by FXR Racing, full throttle addiction.
The new for 2016 AXYS RMK truly is remarkable, and I can say it's one of the best mountain sleds that I have ever ridden. But what does it actually take to make a Rocky Mountain King? Marty Sampson from Polaris R&D is going to tell us just that.
The success of the ProRide chassis was awesome. As we look forward from ProRide looking at the AXYS RMK, what we were really trying to do with AXYS RMK was what we like as riders. And as you try to figure out what you want to make better, is to figure out what you maybe can't do on your current sled that you want to do better. Hold that one side hill that you couldn't hold before, maybe the back end washed out, or get the sled to initiate around a corner or around this tree that you wanted to, a line that you wanted to pull. So when it boils back to what we want to make better, it's what we want to make better for ourselves as riders. And the things that became obvious to us were we want the sled to pop out of the snow and get up on top of the snow as quickly as we can. We want it to be as easy as it can possibly be to initiate a turn or maneuver. We wanted the sled to do exactly what you want it to do, to be part of what you're thinking, and to be very predictable so you can do that over and over. So every time you initiate a turn with a given amount of effort, or every time you turn downhill or turn uphill, we want it to feel the same, do the same thing, be really predictable, and do that as easy as possible.
Now with that said, Polaris realized that the previous ProRide RMK chassis was a pretty good thing, and they had attributes that they absolutely did not want to change.
The former RMK chassis, the ProRide RMK, did a lot of things really well, and we wanted to make sure that we carried that into the new AXYS chassis. We wanted to make sure that the sled, one of the big things that the ProRide had and really brought to the marketplace, and that we talked about a lot, was balance. And when you look at the AXYS chassis and then you look back at the ProRide chassis, a lot of people would say that both sleds have very, very good balance. So the rider's in the right spot on the chassis responds to the rider because you're in the right spot, whether it's being forward for initiating a turn or being back when you're climbing or turning back uphill in a steep side hill. The balance of the sled and the balance of where the rider interacts with the sled is super important for that. So ProRide had good balance. The AXYS chassis has a very similar balance to the ProRide. And that was extremely important to us. Along with that, a lot of the things that the ProRide really did well, side hilling, holding a side hill. There wasn't too many sleds out there that held a side hill like the ProRide did. We knew that, we liked that, and we tried to make that better, and we did. With the AXYS raised chassis, that gives you more clearance to hold that side hill. We narrowed up the bodywork even more to give you more clearance so you can hold that line that you're trying to hold without getting knocked offline or the sled turning up or back down on you. Another thing that our chassis do really, really well is respond to the rider's input. And that's when you put your foot down to initiate a turn or to initiate a maneuver, the chassis needs to be stiff and responsive, have low inertia, and does exactly what the rider wants it to do.
With the chassis of the sled dialed, the heart of this snowmobile was equally as important, and the redesigned 800 Liberty in the 2016 AXYS RMK has been nothing short of impressive.
Well, with the new Liberty HO 800, we're really excited about the performance that engine brings. That engine does a few things for us, and especially in the AXYS RMK, we can talk about it from a few different directions. So one, it brings power. It makes more power than our current 800, and we all know that mountain sleds thrive on power. So the power of that engine is really, really strong. And another thing that we did with that engine is we focused a lot on response, so throttle response, getting the engine to respond right when you touch the throttle so it leaps forward and gives you that launch that you need in a mountain sled to make that turn or maneuver or get the sled to pop up on top of the snow. And then another big piece of it is the lightweight crankshaft. So that does a couple things for the sled. The lightweight crank came from our race motors, and the reason they wanted lightweight crankshafts in racing is the same reason we want that in mountain sleds, because it lets the engine spool up really quick. You're spinning up less mass, so it spools up when you grab the throttle, part of that response. But the other thing it really does for the RMK sled is it lowers the inertia of the engine. What that means is the engine has less gyroscopic effect over the chassis, so the chassis responds quicker to your input. It responds lighter, it makes it easier to ride. So a lot of people, when they see that lightweight crankshaft, they think just throttle response, but it also makes the sled feel lighter and easier to ride because that engine spinning at over 8,000 RPM is a pretty important piece for the handling of the sled. And taking 2.5 pounds out of that crankshaft is really important for that.
SnowTrax is sponsored by MBRP Performance Exhaust. Lightweight performance.
With a potent motor under the hood that not only feels instantly responsive but also hugely powerful, the next thing in the list of changes must be the driveline. Or is it?
So when we look at quick drive in the RMKs, we had quick drive, we brought that to market with the Pro RMK, and we've obviously kept that as we've gone into the AXYS RMK. Quick drive is something that we're really excited about. Quick drive, we have it played back to us a lot by customers that they can't believe how much better the sled feels with the quick drive system in it. They can feel that response, they can feel the sled leap forward, and they can also feel the light handling that you get with the quick drive system. So the quick drive does a few things for the rider. First, it lowers the inertia of the driveline, which makes the sled respond easier, more quickly. And then the second thing it does is it gives you better response. It transfers the power to the driveline very efficiently, so it lets the track spool up quickly. On the inertia piece, we talk a lot about what that actually means to the rider. And as a rider, you love to have the sled do what you want it to do with the least amount of effort possible. And we've equated that back to about a 5-pound difference with the amount of weight or the amount of energy that you need to put into the running board to get the sled to respond with your foot. It takes about 5 pounds less overall if you have the quick drive system on your sled than if you have a chain case system on your sled. Yeah, quick drive is a technology that we're really proud of and something that works really good in mountain sleds, and we're really happy to bring it into the new AXYS RMK chassis.
Each manufacturer has certain keywords that they use as identifiers, and one very important to both Polaris and the RMK platform is lift. But truly, what does that mean?
So when we talk about lift in the AXYS RMK chassis, it means quite a few things to us. First, it means that you get the response from the engine through the driveline into the chassis and into the track. So the sled, when you squeeze the throttle, reacts to that, pops on the snow quickly, and then starts to build speed over the snow. And lift comes in a lot of different ways to a lot of different riders. Lift can possibly mean if you're climbing a hill that the sled doesn't start trenching and start wheeling as you go up the hill, so you still have control over the sled. Lift can mean if you're down in the trees and you're boondocking and you need to cut up around a corner, that you come to a really slow speed and then you grab a bunch of throttle and the sled goes forward instead of trenching out and getting stuck there. Lift might mean that you're out playing in a meadow and you just want to drive away on a deep snow day and the sled doesn't trench down and get stuck when you just stopped, or maybe you stopped slightly uphill and the sled has to have lift to get itself back up on top of the snow and start going forward. So it's something that we concentrate a lot on, and there's a lot built into the design of the AXYS RMK chassis that enhances lift as we talk about it. The new tracks, the new Series 6 and Series 7 tracks that we have, which are their 2.6 and 3-inch lug heights. We concentrate a lot on lift as we develop our tracks. And we develop the tracks so they have lift in the flex of the lug to pop you up on top of the snow, and then to have traction to build speed over the snow. When we talk about lift, it also means that it's the right amount of transfer in the suspension to get the sled up on top of the snow, but not to carry the skis in the air for a long time where you're wasting that energy to try to move the sled forward as quickly as possible to keep you from getting stuck. Everything from the raised chassis where it gets the chassis up out of the snow, to the drive shaft positions, to the approach angles of the tracks, to the track design itself, to the rear suspension and how the rear suspension reacts with its geometry when you're on the gas, to get the sled to transfer the right amount of weight, get the track to interface with that, to lift it up out of the snow, and to move you forward as quickly and efficiently as possible.
It's very obvious that the RMK project is extremely important to Polaris, and all of these aspects that we've discussed make the Polaris even better. But at the core, there has always been one thing that's been top of mind for all engineers.
The lighter the sled is, the better it's going to be. The more fun it's going to be, the more reactive it's going to be, the more predictable it's going to be, the less effort it's going to take for you to ride it. So yeah, we're really aggressive about keeping the weight out of our sleds and just driving it down, as much as we can. And it truly is because we want the sled to be as good as we can possibly make it. Can it get lighter? Possibly. Can it get better? Absolutely. There's lots of ways that we can chase that down and make it better and more exciting, and can't wait to see what the future brings.
SnowTrax is sponsored by Snowmobile in Quebec. Experience a ride you'll never forget.
It's no secret that all of us here at SnowTrax TV felt Skidoo's XR chassis was in need of an update. Its chubby cheeks look had become a bit long in the tooth, and it just didn't look right sitting alongside the freshly updated XS. In 2016, we got what we wanted, a complete visual overhaul of the 1200 Fortec XR chassis lineup. Visually, the results speak for themselves, but it left us curious about what had been changed and what had been left alone, both on the outside and under the hood. By now, everybody knows that the XR was what Skidoo called their 4-stroke chassis. Because the 1200 Fortec motor was so much larger than the 600 or 800cc E-Tech 2-strokes, a chassis designed specifically for the 4-stroke power plant was needed. In reality though, the XR was only marginally different than the XP under the hood. All the suspension components were the same, as was the tunnel and front clip. It was just the bulkhead and engine mounting areas that were unique. So why then did the XR have to look any different than the XP? Simply put, the engine, not the chassis, was too wide to fit inside the XP bodywork. So the XR bodywork was born, and while not necessarily the sleekest, most sporty looking plastic, the original XR body panels came with a few unexpected benefits over the XP parts. First, they provided better wind protection for your knees, and second, as a result of the first, the sled was warmer to ride. But when the XS bodywork was released, having solved many of the XP's wind protection issues, the benefits of the XR bodywork were no longer valid, so a new layout was needed. Enter the 2016 XS Fortec body, a fresh new look with some added benefits. Obviously, much of the plastic on the XS 4-stroke is exactly the same as the XS 2-stroke models. Everything down the middle of the sled is identical, with the only difference being the actual side panels themselves. And the differences here are very minor. The rear of the panel is slightly wider with a different profile and extended wings on the outer edge. At a quick glance, you'd be hard-pressed to tell the difference. A few of the other benefits of the XS Fortec update are the inclusion of the storage container above the gauge, more room for your knees when riding aggressively, and better sight lines down each side of the sled. All good things. Under the hood, the changes are minimal. Obviously, mounting the updated plastic required all new mounts and brackets, but the actual layout of the Fortec chassis remains the same. The final piece of the 2016 XS Fortec update is strictly mechanical and is designed to reduce or at least mask the infamous 1200 Fortec throttle lag. BRP's answer was to fit the 1200 Fortec models with their ITC electronic throttle control. You know, the one from the Ace that we have very mixed feelings about. The throttle is light, there's no question, and the ability to rotate the flipper to the front and use your fingers for throttle is interesting. Whether you like or dislike the feel of an electronic throttle, that's personal. But the number one complaint we hear and we feel ourselves is that there's a lack of connection with the sled. The throttle just doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like you're actually interacting with the engine, and when combined with the still noticeable throttle lag, the overall feeling is very unintuitive. If we had the choice, we'd take a cable-operated throttle any day. The 2016 Fortec facelift looks great, it's functional, and it visually unifies all of Skidoo's snowmobiles. It also saves a bit of weight and includes a few new features. There's no question in our minds, this update makes all Skidoo 4-stroke snowmobiles that much better.
SnowTrax is sponsored by Princess Auto, a unique world of equipment, tools, and more. Closed captioning of SnowTrax is sponsored by Triton Trailer, built for adventure.
It's been 3 years since Yamaha and Arctic Cat partnered to produce the Viper. In that time, Yamaha has tweaked the Viper to increasingly include more of their own DNA. On this week's test ride, we're going to drill down and find out what makes a Viper a Viper. First, we'll talk about this Viper model, the Ditchbanger RTX, with upscale Fox float suspension components and a racy look that's impossible to miss. The Viper wears its own appealing fascia and headlight, and the company has consistently produced exceptionally attractive graphic and coloration packages for the Viper. This RTX model is no exception. The 129-inch sliding arm skid out back has been perfect for aggressive trail riding the past 3 seasons. We now want to determine if this 2016 Viper variant can provide a satisfying mainstream trail experience. It has become increasingly clear to us here at SnowTrax World Headquarters that 4-strokes do not make the best platform for ditch banging. Now, you may beg to differ. However, the extra weight of a 4-stroke, still pegged at about 60 pounds to a comparable 2-stroke, precludes heroic ditch antics. That reality is not necessarily bad. After all, there's a myriad of riding disciplines 4-strokes capably perform as well or better than 2-strokes. Big mile touring, 2-up riding, and utility functions are increasingly handled better by 4-strokes. However, that does not get to the heart of the issue. Is this 4-stroke powered Viper a legitimate performance trail sled or just an overweight wannabe? Clearly, this issue comes down to Yamaha's immensely capable 1049cc 12-valve triple-cylinder 4-stroke. This engine puts the Viper in a league all of its own. And let's set the record straight, it isn't solely about peak horsepower or top speed. It's about the seamless torque and the 2-stroke-ish thrust the 1049 extrudes. Make no mistake about this, the stake in the Viper package resides right here under the hood. Clearly, Yamaha DNA, specifically the company's incomparable engine building skill, is bolted into every Viper and makes this sled uniquely capable at shredding trails and logging big miles day after day. Something else that's purely Yamaha and contributes to the Viper's unique flavor is the YXRC clutch duo. We've made some comments the past 3 years about this clutch setup needing an update, specifically a roller cam helix in the secondary. And we stand by that observation. However, we cannot and will not deny that Yamaha's current YXRC clutch combo is ridiculously kind to Kevlar. The lack of a roller cam keeps the engine lugging hard and takes full advantage of 4-stroke torque. One issue Yamaha has hung their helmet on that doesn't ring any of our bells is a propensity to equip their performance trail sleds with the skimpiest, most ineffective windshields in the biz. Inasmuch as we get the tough guy look of this useless piece of polycarbonate, its effectiveness is limited to locales that do not enjoy winter. Truth is, you can buy a replacement windshield for your Viper and enjoy comfort and good looks. Another exclusive Yamaha feature included on the Viper that confounds us is the inclusion of their tuner skis. These dual-skag tunnel-style boards produce good and not so good handling traits. Here's what we mean. The tuner ski can be set up with a plethora of varying length carbide runners to custom tune your handling preference. We've fiddled with inside and outside carbide lengths and can attest to this adjustability's effectiveness, but with one caveat: snow conditions. If the snow is relatively frozen and packed, these skis will carve predictably. However, when the snow is loose, tunnel-style boards produce unrepentant understeer or push as snow balls up in the tunnel and raises the ski bottom off the snow in turns. This is not uncommon with this design. The RTX upscale Fox suspension is among the best calibrated setups Yamaha has delivered using air spring front shocks. The feel at trail speed in chop or while standing through deep whoops is comfortable using copious travel to isolate the rider from impacts. The sliding arm rear skid is legendary for leveling jigglers at high speeds. What hasn't been so legendary is Yamaha's previous torsion spring and rear arm shock calibration in bigger bumps. For model year 16, we think Yamaha has nailed the rear skid's calibration, producing overall trail ride compliance we've not experienced with Fox performance dampers and air shocks. For model year 16, we think the Viper 129 RTX has come into its own, delivering ride quality that's not just mainstream, but very good. When you shake out the Viper 129 RTX, it all comes down to the engine. This chassis loves to be pulled around by the 1049 Yama Triple. It delivers addictive corner-to-corner thrust and respectable top end. Truth is, there's a reason why we've anointed this engine as the best four-stroke power plant in the business.
SnowTrax has been sponsored by Polaris Terrain Domination, Arctic Cat, share our passion, and by Ontario Highlands, come wander.
If you enjoyed the video that you just saw, like it and then subscribe to our page for more great content from SnowTrax TV.